I was embarrassed. I was humiliated. Watching the President of the United States in front of Xi, we're good. I mean, he was negotiating away this country in the first 5 minutes of the photo op. He came back with nothing. He got played by President Xi.
He says he got a good deal.
He said that. How many trade deals? 90 in 90 days? How many have you read and reviewed? How many have been signed? 0. His policy is press release. And the fact that you and I will be paying more for toys this Christmas, and we are already paying more for Halloween, bears truth to my assertion of the recklessness of his policies. He's wrecking this country. The jobs market is weak. Inflation is starting to creep back up. This is unprecedented to see in such a short period of time this kind of destruction to the progress we were experiencing that he inherited.
Was Trump's meeting with Xi Jinping a failure, or are politicians merely trying to spin it as such? This is the question at the heart of recent commentary, particularly from California Governor Gavin Newsom. In the video we just watched, Newsom claimed he was embarrassed and humiliated by the event, suggesting that President Trump achieved nothing and was outmaneuvered by Xi. But let's dissect these claims methodically, using facts and critical questions to determine whether the summit was indeed a failure, or if the narrative is being shaped by political spin. Newsom began by expressing that he felt embarrassed and humiliated watching the President of the United States interact with Xi Jinping. However, one might ask, is this reaction based on the objective outcomes of the summit, or is it influenced by a preconceived bias against Trump's policies? For many who supported Trump in the last election, the summit held in Busan, South Korea, was not about personal pride, but about securing tangible benefits for the United States. Reports indicate that the meeting resulted in a reduction of U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods from 57% to 47%, a commitment from China to curb fentanyl exports, and agreements on the purchase of 25 million metric tons of U.S. soybeans annually, as well as assurances on rare earth mineral exports. These are not insignificant achievements. So, shouldn't the focus be on the results, rather than personal feelings? Isn't it possible that Newsom's embarrassment is more about his political stance than the actual outcomes? See how Trump himself recapped their meeting.
But overall, I guess on the scale of from 0 to 10, with 10 being the best, I would say the meeting was a 12. Okay, I think it was a 12. I think very importantly, just the whole relationship is very, very important, and I think it was really good.
Especially coming on the heels of the successful trip. We're in Malaysia. You signed a peace deal for Cambodia and Thailand. Critical mineral deals with all our allies.
So many successful meetings,
right?
And so many meetings great for our country, with literally hundreds of billions, trillions of dollars have come into our country over the last 4 days, represented by this meeting. But trillions of dollars, where Toyota is going to build plants, $10 billion worth of plants, and I could go over so many different companies coming in. They're pouring money into the United States.
Trump's claims have since been corroborated by various sources, indicating that Newsom is deliberately misrepresenting the facts. Now, let's look at another of Newsom's claims. He asserted that Trump was negotiating away the country within the first 5 minutes of what he described as a mere photo opportunity, claiming that Trump came back with nothing and got played by Xi Jinping. But is this a fair assessment? The facts suggest otherwise. Trump secured a deal where China agreed to purchase 25 million metric tons of U.S. soybeans annually, directly benefiting American farmers. Additionally, China pledged to work on curbing the flow of fentanyl precursor chemicals, a critical issue given the opioid crisis's impact on American lives. One might wonder, if these outcomes are nothing, what would Newsom consider a success? And isn't it possible that Trump's tough stance forced China to make these concessions, rather than the other way around? Could it be that Newsom's claim of Trump being played is an attempt to spin the narrative, rather than a reflection of reality? Remember, the governor has had very strong views on Trump, and he could be letting those cloud his judgment. Here are some of his controversial takes on Trump.
He continues to lose. He's going to lose in Virginia. He's going to lose in New Jersey in those governor's races. He's going to continue to see his polls are some of the worst in American history. His policies are the most unpopular in modern American history. He's flailing every single day. That's what all these threats and the mortgage stuff is all about, going after enemies, threatening to arrest people. He's falling apart. And as I continue to say, he's weakness masquerading as strength. And so we have to be assertive, and we have to recognize that there are no limits with this guy.
Well, as you can see, there is a personal element to the perceptions of the two leaders. Newsom then criticized Trump by questioning the number of trade deals signed, suggesting that despite claims of a deal, nothing had been formally reviewed or signed within a 90-day period. Yet, this raises a logical question. Are 90 days a realistic timeframe for finalizing complex international agreements, especially with a country like China? The summit resulted in a framework for future negotiations, which is a significant step forward. Critics might ask, isn't Newsom's focus on the lack of immediate signatures a distraction from the broader strategic progress being made? After all, the framework itself is a foundation for addressing long-standing trade imbalances. Isn't it more accurate to see this as a starting point rather than a failure? And isn't Newsom's timeline arbitrary, designed to fit a narrative, rather than reflect the realities of international diplomacy? Newsom's claim that Trump's policy is merely a press release invites further scrutiny. Is this a fair characterization, or does it overlook the economic leverage Trump has applied through tariffs? The pressure from these tariffs led to the summit and the subsequent agreements. One might pose the question, wouldn't it be more accurate to see the press releases as part of a larger strategy to force China to negotiate, rather than empty rhetoric? The outcomes from the summit, while not fully realized, are a direct result of this approach. So, isn't Newsom's criticism here more about style than substance? Could it be that he's trying to spin the event as a failure because the substance doesn't align with his political narrative? Newsom warned that Americans would pay more for toys this Christmas and had already paid more for Halloween due to Trump's policies. This statement prompts a rhetorical question: are these short-term price increases the whole story, or part of a larger strategy to protect American industries? The data shows that despite tariffs, consumer spending has increased, suggesting economic resilience. One might ask, isn't Newsom exaggerating the impact to stoke fear, while ignoring the long-term goal of reducing dependency on Chinese manufacturing? The temporary price hikes could be seen as a small price to pay for greater economic security, couldn't they? Isn't it possible that Newsom's focus on consumer costs is an attempt to spin the summit as a failure, rather than acknowledging the strategic intent behind Trump's policies? Newsom's assertion that Trump's policies are reckless and wrecking the country, particularly claiming a weak jobs market and rising inflation, invites a logical critique. Is the jobs market truly weak under Trump's tenure? Unemployment remains low, and despite global challenges, the U.S. economy has shown growth. Regarding inflation, it's a global phenomenon, not solely attributable to U.S. policy. One might ask, isn't Newsom cherry-picking data to fit a narrative, rather than acknowledging the broader economic context? The economy grew at an annual rate of 3.8% between April and June 2025, which hardly sounds like wreckage. So, isn't his claim of destruction more hyperbole than reality? Could it be that Newsom is trying to spin the summit as a failure by focusing on isolated economic indicators rather than the overall picture? Finally, Newsom described the situation as unprecedented, suggesting that Trump has caused destruction to the progress previously experienced. But this raises a critical question: what progress is he referring to, and was it sustainable? The previous administration's approach to China was criticized for not effectively addressing unfair trade practices. Trump inherited an economy vulnerable to these imbalances, and his actions are aimed at correcting them. One might ask, isn't it possible that the so-called destruction Newsom laments is actually a necessary reset to build a stronger, more independent economy? For many who voted for Trump, this is about reclaiming our economic standing and standing up to a global bully, not about undoing progress. Isn't it likely that Newsom's narrative of destruction is an attempt to spin the summit as a failure, rather than a fair assessment of its outcomes? All in all, the question of whether Trump's meeting with Xi Jinping was a failure, or if politicians are merely trying to spin it as such is best, answered by examining the facts. The reduction in tariffs, commitments on fentanyl, and agreements on soybeans and rare earths are steps forward, not backward. Newsom's comments, while framed as embarrassment and humiliation, appear to be more about political opposition than objective analysis. One might wonder, isn't it possible that the spin is an attempt to undermine a strategic win for the United States? For those who believe in the importance of confronting China and protecting American interests, this summit represents progress, not failure. Thank you for watching, and remember, the facts and critical questions matter more than the spin. Please like the video and subscribe to our channel to help us continue to create these informative videos sustainably. Until next time, be safe and bye.